Now, OnePlus's flagship phones are still among the most affordable here in 2020, costing a huge chunk of change less than one of those top-end Samsungs or one of those iPhone jobbies. On the other hand, the latest OnePlus 8 flagship phone does cost from £600, which is going to seriously deplete the beer fund of most consumers out there. And of course, in 2020, we need that booze more than ever before, and perhaps that's why OnePlus has launched its first mid-range smartphone in quite some time, the OnePlus Nord. Now, at the time I shot this unboxing, unfortunately I still don't know the final UK retail price. I'm hoping it'll be no more than £400 though. It'll definitely still have strong competition from the likes of the Oppo Find X2 Lite, the Moto G 5G Plus, and of course the excellent Realme X50 5G, which I just reviewed, an absolute belter of a budget phone. But ahead of my full in-depth OnePlus Nord review, I'm going to yank it out of the box and take you on a full-on tour of all of the hardware and the software so you know exactly what to expect from this 5G handset. And for more of the latest greatest tech, please do plug subscribe and ding that notifications bell. Cheers! Now, first of all, I'm definitely digging that super dark box. It's a huge departure from the traditional white and red efforts that OnePlus usually packs its flagships inside. And already the random slogans have begun. This way Nord. Nord, of course, meaning north in various European languages. What else do you get packed inside of the Nord box? Well, of course, you get the obligatory OnePlus stickers. You have the just as obligatory welcome letter as well from the chief bods at OnePlus. And there they are there, the crew that actually worked on the smartphone. And from the looks of all the pre-launch teaser stuff that OnePlus put out on the interwebs, it definitely looks like there were a lot of sleepless nights poured into this thing, so I hope it is genuinely good. Got a quick start guide, pokey pin device, and I was also hoping for one of these as well, a pre-bundled condom case which you can slap on the OnePlus Nord just to help keep it protected. And then lastly, of course, your Warp Charge 30 adapter, and then you've got your standard bright red OnePlus Type-C charging cable as well. I was kind of hoping they would go for a proper gothic black effort for that one as well. And so here it is at long last, the OnePlus Nord in the flesh, and it's good to finally have a proper fondle of the thing after seeing so much about it on the internet, of course. This right here is the blue marble version, but you can also pick it up in grey onyx if you're not really a fan of those sort of brighter, more vibrant colours. You want to really embrace your inner emo. And I'll tell you what, super quick first impressions, I definitely like it. It feels quite compact, certainly coming from a lot of the sort of 6.5, 6.6 inch beasts that I've been playing with lately. So this is a 6.44 inch model instead, and I really like that shiny, colourful back end as well. And the good news is it's Gorilla Glass 5 both on the back end and the front end as well to keep it protected. And you've also got a pre-installed screen protector as well, so double hard bastard. And if you want to see what the OnePlus Nord looks like with the bundled prophylactic case slapped on it, well, it looks an awful lot like this. Again, it's nice to see a bit of design and thought actually applied to bundled accessories like this bumper right here. As you can see, that's kind of a combination of gloss and matte on the back end. And if you look down below, they've even included a wee flappy bit just to cover up that USB port and help prevent any crud and crap from getting into that hole. So yeah, that's good. And if you're not really a fan of that rubber bumper, well, don't worry, OnePlus is doing a selection of colourful cases as usual, which you can slap on there to change up the look and feel of the OnePlus Nord. As for the rest of the design here on the OnePlus Nord, no real surprises. You've got your power button on the right edge, you've got your alert slider, of course, as standard. You've got your volume keys over here on the other edge. And then down below, you've got your USB port and your SIM tray, and of course, bugger all headphone jack. So hopefully there's some battery life on the go. Yes, excellent. Right, just going to get the OnePlus Nord all set up, and then we'll take a full-on tour of the rest of the hardware and the software. Oh, and it's also worth pointing out that it's a dual SIM device, the OnePlus Nord. You can stick 2 SIM cards in at once, but there's no room for microSD memory cards, just like with the flagship, so you're stuck with your 128 or 256 gigs of onboard storage. Still plenty of space for lots of stuff. Okay, so the OnePlus Nord is ready for action, and sat here on top of Android 10 is the latest OxygenOS 10.5 overlay as well, so it's a very similar software setup to what you get on the actual flagship smartphones. And if you've seen my OnePlus coverage in the past, you'll know I'm definitely a fan of OxygenOS. I think it's just the right level of tinkering with stock Android to add some really useful features in there without going absolutely crazy. As usual, we've got plenty of personalization options on here. If you dive into the home settings, you've got lots of things there. You can change around the icon packs, the home screen layouts, all that kind of stuff. I'm just going to change the wallpaper quickly. I do quite like the OnePlus papers. I think they're quite funky, and you've got, as you can see, lots of different styles to choose from. But of course, I am a massive fan of my geeky anime efforts. I'm going to dive on here, get a bit of Dr. Stone action on the go. There we go. Nice and nerdy, just the way I like it. And apparently the OnePlus Minions have been slaving away to make lots of little refinements in the background just to ensure that it's a super silky smooth experience here on the OnePlus Nord, just as it is on those flagship phones, and certainly so far. It's still busy sort of setting up in the background, installing my apps and all the rest of it, but everything seems to be running nice and smooth. And in further good news, OnePlus is guaranteeing 2 full years of software updates and 3 years of security updates with the OnePlus Nord as well, so you definitely won't get shafted on that front. Hopefully should get Android 11 fairly sharpish when that's fully released later in 2020, and then Android 12, touchwood, next year as well. And it's definitely fantastic to see that sort of level of commitment to updates from a smartphone manufacturer, because most of them are just like, we'll see what we can do, and they leave it at that. So now let's move on to another highlight of the OnePlus Nord, and that is the 6.44-inch AMOLED display. So you don't tend to get many OLED screens on these more affordable 5G phones. The Find X2 Lite had an OLED, but apart from that, like the Moto G 5G Plus and the Realme X50 5G, they use IPS screens instead. And the OnePlus Nord definitely serves up crisp visuals thanks to the Full HD Plus resolution. You get those nice punchy, vibrant colours and those nice deep blacks as well, so really strong contrast, definitely helped along by that OLED tech. If you dive on into the display settings, you can have a good old play around. That maximum brightness is super powerful, so definitely no worries seeing this thing on a bright sunshiny day. Let's hope we get plenty of those this summer. The vibrant colour effect is actually switched off by default, so you'll have to knock that on if you want those sort of more punchy hues rather than the more natural finish. Of course, you've got the usual night mode, reading mode, all the nice easy on the eye stuff. If you dive on into the advanced display settings, that's where the really sexy stuff is. As you can see here, you've got a 90Hz refresh rate to match the Moto G 5G Plus, although not quite the Realme X50 5G, of course. And as you can see there, it's stuck at 90Hz by default, but it will dynamically switch between 90 and 60, depending on what you're up to. Kind of a shame you don't have an option to just sort of leave it stuck at 90, but at least that'll help preserve your battery life. And yes, of course, there is, unfortunately, a massive dual selfie cutout thing wedged away in the corner up at the top of the screen there. And yes, that does infiltrate on your viewing experience whenever you're watching something full screen in the likes of Disney Plus or YouTube. Thankfully in Netflix, when you do go full screen, it is blocked out. And if you look again in the advanced display settings, you've got front camera display area, so you can completely block that from view if it really does annoy you. And it's also possible to see exactly which apps will display full screen, or which ones will have that cutout if you just want it for certain apps and not all of them. And before I forget as well, you do actually have an in-display fingerprint sensor here on the OnePlus Nord as well. I haven't actually seen too many of those recently. They seem to be swapping to the edge-mounted fingerprint sensors in a lot of smartphones. But yeah, it seems nice and responsive, as you can see. Quick tap, boom, motherfucker, straight in. So display, definitely good, but what about the audio? Well, as far as the internal speakers go, you've just got a single bottom firing mono effort here, no stereo speaker setup or anything. Let's just bump up the volume. Please do book, subscribe, and ding that notifications bell. Cheers. Now first up, Realme really knows how to make even the most budget-friendly. So that is definitely super powerful on that top volume. You'll have no problem listening to that even in a very noisy environment. Clarity not bad either, got to say, on that top volume. You can still clearly hear vocals and everything coming through. And yeah, as I mentioned before, unfortunately there's no headphone jack action here on the OnePlus Nord, but you do get full Bluetooth 5.1 support, and you've got plenty of good audio codec support on there as well. So obviously the likes of AAC, aptX HD, you've got LDAC on there as well if you've got a pair of headphones that supports that. So overall, not perfect, sure, but pretty decent. As far as performance goes, the OnePlus Nord should absolutely kill it. What you got in here is the Snapdragon 765G chipset, the same as the Realme X50 5G, which I just reviewed. So it's not the 865 of those flagship smartphones, but it'll still absolutely kill it for running all of your apps, bit of split screen action, and a bit of gaming as well, no problem. Like so PubG Mobile and Call of Duty should play on those higher detail levels with a nice silky smooth frame rate. Especially as you've got a choice here of either 8 or 12 gigs of DDR4 RAM as well. So yeah, no problem with the multitasker, no matter how many apps are running in the background. And of course you've got full 5G support built into that 765 as well. The modem's actually part of the chipset. So whenever 5G does happen to come to your neck of the woods, you are covered. And I'm also hoping that you'll get all-day battery life for the OnePlus Nord as well, because it's got 4,115 mAh cells stuffed in there. OnePlus phones, they tend to last the day with a battery size around that sort of area, and the 765G is fairly energy efficient. And it's great to see that the optimized charging feature is back on board here on the OnePlus Nord as well. Great news if you leave your smartphone charging all night long plugged in, just help to prevent long-term battery damage there. But you do have Warp Charge 30T support here on the OnePlus Nord, so hopefully it shouldn't take much more than an hour to get fully powered back up again when you are drained. As for the rest of the software, well, it looks pretty standard here on the OnePlus Nord. Of course, you've got usual gesture controls and everything. You've got full on dark mode, all the usual Android 10 stuff. Alert slider, of course, back in action, so you can instantly silence your smartphone if you're heading into a meeting or something like that. And you've also got a face unlock feature as usual to back up the fingerprint sensor. So just get that on the go, stick my face in the hole, And let's give that a quick test out. So just hit the power button and yep, absolutely smashed it. Now let's finish up with a look at the OnePlus Nord's camera tech, and what you have here is a 48 megapixel primary shooter using Sony's popular and dependable IMX586 sensor. It's a similar sort of setup to the flagship OnePlus 8, which is great to see. As you can see there, the OnePlus camera app sports a very familiar layout. What you do is you actually shoot 12 megapixel photos by default, being quickly swapped to the full 48 megapixel up top like so if you desire that extra bit of detail smushed in there. You could also swap to the OnePlus Nord's 8 megapixel ultra wide angle lens at any point with a quick tap of this little icon here. As you can see, that just offers a nice widespread view. Otherwise, if you tap here, it offers a 2x zoom, but it's of course just digital zoom because there's no telephoto lens here on the OnePlus Nord. Now, if you want to get in super close to your subject to take a crazy close-up, then what you want to do is swap to the super macro feature, which uses the 2 megapixel macro lens. I think it's mostly pointless. Other people would disagree, but they're mostly wrong. And finishing off that quad lens setup here on the OnePlus Nord is a 5 megapixel depth sensor. So that'll just help to add a nice depth effect, as you can see, to your shots. So it'll blur out the background and keep your subject nice and crisp. And you've got a handful of other camera modes to play around with here on the Nord, including OnePlus's dependable nightscape mode, which just allows you to capture lots of different exposure shots. Just really brightens up your shot. You've got full pro controls as well, with of course a bit of level action, so you can make sure you get a nice flat shots. You can shoot in JPEG as well as RAW, as you can see there. And you do have a full JPEG 48 megapixel option too. When it comes to shooting some home movies as well, you can go all the way up to 4K resolution, of course, as you can with most smartphones these days, but it does max out at 30 FPS. You can't shoot 4K at full 60 FPS like with some other OnePlus phones. Although you do have the option of shooting in a 21:9 aspect ratio here on the OnePlus Nord, which is quite funky at that 4K level. And as you can see there, with the front-facing camera, you can actually shoot 4K and up to 60 FPS still. And speaking of that front-facing camera, let's swap to that now. So the primary lens, because it is a dual lens setup, is a 32 megapixel effort using Sony's IMX616 sensor. So as you can see, that can capture hopefully a nice crisp detailed selfie. And at any point, if you're with a whole group of besties or whatever, you can swap to the 8 megapixel ultra wide angle mode. So in my case, it'll just capture a whole lot of extra background. And of course, you've got the usual portrait mode smarts as well, if you want to blur out everything behind you instead. So there you have it, the OnePlus Nord unboxed, and hope that has been helpful ahead of my in-depth OnePlus Nord review to see if it really is going to be a true competitor to the likes of the Oppo Find X2 Lite, the Realme X50 5G, and the Moto G 5G Plus. It'd be absolutely fantastic to hear your early impressions down in the comments below. I say early impressions, this thing's been busily floating about on the internet for about a month or so, but it's nice to finally have a proper fondle of the thing and get to grips with it. So definitely please do smash your comments down in the box below, poke that f***ing subscribe button, ding the notifications bell, all the YouTube shenanigans, and most importantly, have yourselves a lovely day, people. Cheers everyone, love you!